Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
But the thing is, it's not as clear cut as that. Like you're mentioning, if somebody's like, say you're a really good player of like Miracle Standard,
Yeah.
and you're at, let's say, 4K. I mean, sure, you'll be able to quite easily climb to 5K, but the amount of games you'll go into when 5 people ping mid and you have to convince your teammates why you're going to win them the game if they let you play mid. Like, see, you'll be able to climb quickly, but that's assuming that the team you're put on, whilst you're playing ranked, are gonna be, you know, at the point where they can trust you, and like the team's playing, if everyone's playing like as they should, so that you haven't got 5 people pinging to go mid. Because if that happens, and that does happen, and it happens even in higher brackets, like that kind of stuff still happens because everyone thinks they're better than the other, so they're like, oh, I've got more MMR than you, let me go mid.
On the server. Meh.
I mean, not even in Europe West, honestly, this happens in various servers.
Never! Europe West is the promised land! Jokes.
Yeah, I'd kind of want it to, but I mean, that kind of stuff still happens. So I mean, in terms of somebody coming in and they're trying to really grind MMR, like, sure, they'll be able to do it eventually, but it's not as clear cut, meaning that it's not going to be a really quick transition from like 4 to 5, 5 to 6. Like, it will take a prolonged amount of time. And the thing is, you need to think about from the player's perspective, like the amount of time you have to spend like constantly grinding MMR. Like, you got to think about what they're doing. Like, are they planning on being a professional? Like, there might be other stuff going on in their lives that limit the amount of time they can play. So I think it does take a long time. But in terms of the people that are already 8, 7, 8, 9K, I think that.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's talk about that. So we did a little bit of number crunching earlier, and so basically, in terms of just to put the MMR thing in perspective, particularly for, you know, our delightful viewers. So shout out to the Philippines, by the way. So approximately 500 people in the world are 7K MMR or higher. So basically, 500 people make up 7, 8, and 9K players. So if you think about it, like, you know, I know like BSJ gets completely slammed sometimes by the great Chilonkwa, and I love Chilonkwa, but you know, and it's like, oh, look at this guy being, you know, making mistakes. But actually, even someone like BSJ, you got to bear in mind, being 7K is insane. Like 500 people out of 13 million is completely bonkers.
Yeah.
And then 8K, so there are approximately 100 players that are 8K or above, which is you know, crazy. And then currently, as you said earlier, 8 players in the world are 9K. And if I'm completely honest, like I say, that steady grind up, because all that's happening is those, you know, 500, maybe up to 1,000, because we include some of the 6Ks as well. You know, 1,000 players are effectively all competing against each other for MMR, because that's what's happening at the very top of the pile. And that, obviously, they've all got to steal from each other, and they've all got to steal from people in the lower brackets and suck it up the chain. And that, like I say, that's the thing about MMR. It doesn't make that process easy. It's not an easy process, particularly given the random element, as if you're a solo in the solo queue. So for me, it's looking at that kind of, you know, tiny pinnacle of players in the world that are that good. It's a battle. It's a real battle to see any of them actually grind their way up. And I think, you know, I think now that inflation, so, you know, now that the inflation system is even harder, I think that's difficult to achieve. And so I think maybe that's kind of the last point, you know, sort of like we should probably talk about, which is the inflation system. So so how does Itama, why don't you answer this one? How does the MMR system inflate? How do we get more overall MMR in the system? If
you're a player that keeps losing games, then the least MMR you'll have is 1.
Yeah.
And you can't go below 1 MMR.
That's right.
So if you're losing all your games, you're never going to go into minus.
Yeah.
So people are able to take MMR from others, but there's always a limit. There's going to be more MMR gained, because if you can't lose MMR and you're still going to be able to get plus 25, even though the person with 1 MMR didn't lose any because they're already at 1 MMR, then there is going to be that inflation of MMR.
Absolutely. And second accounts, third accounts, four, you know, new. So when somebody joins Dota on a second account, calibrates, so they've they've given themselves certain MMR, and then they play on that account while also still playing on their other. So effectively, you've got two people who are taking but also giving to the system, even though it's one person.
Yeah,
so,
they'll need multiple phones though. So
well, yeah, and exactly. So multiple accounts now are in decline. Or account buying is going to be in decline. All that sort of stuff is going to be in decline. And that's what I'm saying is actually one of the biggest ways you'd see inflation is people would calibrate, add MMR to the system. They'd buy that account, lose a load of games, so that they would crash. All that MMR is being given away to other players, and that would also inflate the system. And so you would have that kind of with all the second accounts, third accounts, account buying, and usually with people being unjustifiably high because they've account bought, then you see all this extra MMR going into the system, and all that now is just going to go down the tubes, as it were, because you can't just calibrate in at 4K and then someone buy that and then effectively give that MMR away to other players.
Yeah.
So that inflation is out, and to be honest, that I think is actually bigger than the sub 1 MMR inflation system. So I think on that basis, the rate at which it's going to take someone now to go from 9 to 10K is going to start sort of like that graph plot converging on infinity. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it will definitely take a lot longer now because obviously we've spoke about the cap of the calibration for MMR,
yeah,
and also just the prolonged queue times as well for people at that level. So I mean, we'll just have to wait and see, really.
So
Hopefully.
Well, tell you what, let's end on that. Well, what are your predictions? When do you think we'll see 10K MMR achieved? Legitimately, without sandboxing.
I mean, looking at how almost a year ago, that Miracle was the first person to get to 9K, then I'm thinking if we give it another half a year to a year,
okay, so 2017.
and that's being generous as well. Like I'm pretty sure it will be at least a year, but I'm thinking, if these pro players are grinding a lot to try and get to that stage, then it may be possible to do within the coming year, but we'll see. What do you think?
At least two to 5, to be honest. There you go. I'm being ultra service. Yeah. I think it could. It depends what happens to Dota. If a lot more new people start playing Dota, and so we get a load more players flooding into it, and everyone's like, oh yeah, I love Dota, let's start playing Dota, then I think there's no reason why we couldn't see this. That could inflate. But if things stay at the same, or people even play less Dota, then I think actually, if things stay as they are, as it were, I think as late, it's definitely 2 years. I would say 2 years minimum, up to 5 years maximum to reach 10K, which is depressing, really.
Okay.
I hope I'm wrong.
When it happens, we'll come back to this video and then...
Absolutely, yeah. We should maybe put a bet on it or something.
A bet.
Well, no.
Bet you. I mean, I think the way you're thinking about it is it really is down to a few factors. It's down to how often people are trying to increase their MMR. It's down to the new calibration. It's down to how many people play the game. So yeah. I agree. It's gonna take some time. Definitely not in the next few months. That's for sure. But
awesome. Well, Edna, it's been great chatting to you. And
thanks very much for having me.
And thank you for having me as well on your channel. So anyway, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Take care, and goodbye.
Take care.